Hello, welcome everyone to this malware-free broadcast, co-sponsored today by Odix and Cyfluencer. Speaking today about the paradoxes and misinformation in cyber protection. We are excited to present to you a great panel of speakers, and we'll introduce those to you. If I can have the panel. Today we have Diana Kelley. She's the CTO and co-founder of Security Curve, and we are excited to have her. She has over 30 years experience and donates much of her time to volunteer work, and including on the ACM Ethics and Plagiarism Committee, as well as being an executive board member and of the inclusion and working at WISIS. And we are really excited to have her. And also joining us today, we have Matt Lee, and he is the IT manager and CTO of, I just went blank, sorry, I was going well.
Senior Director of Security and Compliance at PAX 8.
Thank you, Senior Director at PAX 8, and he started back in IT. And we have also with us, we're excited to have Chris Roberts. Sorry guys, my notes have gotten a little jumbled here, but so I'll kind of make it through. Chris Roberts, hacker, infosec, chief geek with Hillbilly Hit Squad, and researcher advisor, along with a whole list of expertise. There we go. And last we have Dr. Oren Eytan, co-founder with Odix and retired colonel with the IDF, and we're really excited to have his background and specialties in infrastructure protection, encryption, network security, and we're really excited to have this panel together. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I'm really looking forward to your insights. And last but not least, Yehuda Sunshine with Odix, and really excited to have you, and you're going to be facilitating. So we're looking forward to having you join.
Thank you so much, Ayala, and thank you so much for co-sponsoring this and helping us set up the panel and really get this moving. It's really an exciting opportunity to have like a really important conversation with some of the leading minds in cybersecurity. So thank you all so much for being here and giving us your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
And I just wanted to say, Cyfluencer, we're really excited to be part of the collaboration. We work with cybersecurity professionals, combining, their expertise along with quality content to provide that out to the cyber community. So we're really looking forward to getting started with everybody today.
Okay, amazing.
With that, I'll pass it over to Yehuda.
Okay, so thank you guys once again for being here. I want to kind of introduce the panel a little bit about what we're here to talk about, what the impetus of this was, and why we're going to try and break some ground and change some ideas here. So I was really driven. I saw Chris Roberts posted something online that he wasn't able to attend Cyber Week in Tel Aviv, and I really wanted to be able to kind of take his experience, take his understanding, take that really, I would say, innovative and different way of approaching cyber risk and kind of bringing it to the Israeli audience, and being able to bring somebody with an MSP background and a military background, and somebody like Diana who works with NGOs and trying to be able to meet these varying cybersecurity needs and kind of show what their experiences are, what the shortcomings that they see are often projected there, and what the simple and practical tools that users and employees can implement that can decrease their attack surface and mitigate cyber risk. So I think I'm gonna start off with Matt here. What do you think the biggest misconception in cyber protection is? We'll start real big.
That tools, and I apologize that this will not be something positive necessarily for you, but the conversation still stands. that tools are not security, right? We're so peddled by the vendors, and I love you all, saying this will stop this, and this will make it malware free, and this will solve this, and this will fix this, that you have this paradox where you can't actually teach the practitioners that that's not true. Just like I've got to go play baseball I have to have a bat, I have to have the ball, and I have to have the shoes and the appropriate cleats and the things I need. You need tools. You do need them. But the core of it is the baseball player. The core of it is the understanding of what we have to do to deliver security in an effective manner. And I think some of the challenges we fight is that it's paradoxical in believing that you can tell everyone that this will stop everything, that this will fix this, that this will make it malware free, that this will solve the risk of an email attack and compromise. But when you translate that out, we really should be telling them, no, this won't. These are the things you need to put in your tool belt and line up and make sure that you have your gaps covered and you're aligned to a framework and that you're using that framework to test against yourself and that you're not holding expectations. And I can go on forever, but I think the core of it is really just that you have a paradox in the way that you have to drive the market as a vendor, as well as teach and educate I come from the MSP and SMB space where I wasn't very educated a few years ago, right? 10 years ago, I was just turning wrenches and putting in bolts and there's no security core framework in it. And so I think the challenge is that you have to go make revenue, but you also have to educate a consumer that there is no magic bullet. There is no perfect answer, right? So that's my point. So, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Diana, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, of course, agree with that. That you're not going to you can't just go buy a tool. You can't go onto a show floor at a conference and pick something out and it's going to magically, or that the next tool is going to solve the problem, because that's what we see again and again. Oh, this SIM was terrible. That new SIM that's next generation and it's using ML, that's going to solve the problems. Nope. As Matt said, that's not going to happen. But I think the adjacent part of that is that there's also this misconception that policies don't matter. Policies are boring and policies are just this ridiculous set of overhead. Well, if you do assessments, the first thing you do is you ask about the policies, because the policies are exactly what, as Matt was talking about, talk to which frameworks you're adopting, what's your strategy, what are your goals, and how you're going to accomplish what you want to for your organizational program. And if you don't have policies and a strategy, forget about buying a tool, because now you're just going to be that old saying, a fool with a tool is still a fool, right? You gotta set out the policy and the strategy, make sure that they're aligning to the business, and then figure out which technology you're going to use to accomplish it.
Yep.
Really, really spot on. Chris, what do you think?
Man, I'm just debating which one of these I want to actually go beat up on and who I want to take a spork to at this point in time. Matt hit a good one. Diana's was perfect, actually, because, so often people forget about it. They chase Matt's thing and go, I'll buy a tool. And they're like, well, that'll fix it without putting paperwork in place. Man, I mean, I'm going to actually go beat the crap out on the vendors again. We might as well have a little bit of fun with this.
It's what we're here for.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You do it so well.
Yeah. Let's see. I can protect you. No, actually, you can't. And I think that's both a human thing and a technology thing. Unfortunately, in the vendor space, we overpromise and underdeliver, and in the human space, we actually only hear the word protect and assume everything's going to be perfectly okay. So I'd like a reality check. I'd like vendors to come in and go, look, I'm an antivirus vendor. The most effective I'm going to be is maybe 5 to 7% effective. Good luck with the rest of it. Maybe if I'm coming as an MSP and MSSP, I come in with a reality check and go, hey, I'll do the best I can. Doesn't sell as nicely, but at least it's reality. And then on the human aspect, we actually need to hear a little bit better and go, as a human, I need to do something more than just relying on the tools. I actually need to step the hell up and maybe think about things a little bit more effectively than just relying on technology, because it is a human problem.
Yeah, for sure. Oren, what are your 2 cents? What do you think about this?
Well, I totally agree. I don't want to take it to the extreme that, some people may think that, we can give up the technology, or let's say, hey, we don't need anything because, we can educate the people. They will be nice guys. They will follow the rules. Even from my military background, which is relatively easy, like, people, soldiers, obey the commands and, they're doing what they're assuming supposed to do, it's still not enough. So we already need to think about this combination and how we really put together and in the right size, in the right amount of both things, the human and the technology. And of course, they complement each other. No one can exist without the other. So
So with that said, I think it's kind of it goes to the next topic that I really wanted to talk about. I want to discuss a little bit the balance of cyber education versus implementing technical solutions. You know, it's very easy to say that we have this product that can stop malware, that can stop this cyber threat, but it's a different thing to be able to empower your staff and to empower your team to be able to stop the majority of human errors and avoidable threats. So how would you balance this relationship? How do you think that organizations need to divide their capital and their resources? Do they need to be focusing in on implementing technical solutions as a primary thing, or really focusing in on consistent cyber education at every single level? Chris, what do you think?
Oh, I'm going to be sarcastic for a second because, apparently artificial intelligence is going to solve everything for us. We can take our hands off the steering wheel.'re all done. We're in good shape. Just according to the vendors, AI will solve everything for us. So we should just let them try. Yes. Not put the dumpster fire up. Yes. This is where
10 minutes in, the dumpster fire came in. Let's be said. I was waiting for it. I didn't think it was going to take that long.
I had that in the pool.
I'm so happy we got the dumpster fire. That was exactly what was needed. I think at that point in time, if the vendor is actually going to promise artificial intelligence is going to solve it, you do actually have a legitimate opportunity to go take the vendor outside. And you do what's known as go gangster. Now in the US, we're allowed to go gangster with tasers. You take an extra 3 or 4 steps backward, and instead of tasering them like this, you taser sideways. What ends up happening is you get one of the taser pieces in the head and one in the groin, and you put it up on YouTube afterwards. It's actually quite fun to do.
Oh, so I've been out of the States for so long. I didn't know that's a thing now. I thought it was.
Oh, it is. Yeah,
just added it. Yeah, sweeping legislation.
It's actually quite fun. It's good target practice for vendors. No, without being too sarcastic and too mean, I think what we need to do, again, it comes back to we chase technology. And we'll get into this a little bit later. I've seen some of the other questions. We'll get into this a little bit later, which is we need to stop the technology chase. We need to take a step back and realize this is a human thing. And how do we take more time to look at the humans? How do we take more time to actually explain it in a way they understand it, not a way that we're comfortable with? And I'll leave it at that for now.
Matt, you seem really, really excited. What do you think?
I think this comes back to some of the earlier paradox I spoke about how, the drive is tools solve this, technology solves this, but really people solve this. I was one of those people that would have done a phishing test and said, oh my gosh, these 20% failed, and you tease them about it, you do all these things. But I actually listened to a British woman speak, and I wish I knew her name so I'd give attribution, but I don't. But she was talking about how we've approached this the wrong way. And this goes into what Chris was saying, that, the humans are the part we have to focus on, but we need to focus on them in a positive way, right? 9 times out of 10, they don't click on the phishing link, or 8 or 7, whatever you want to make it. But the point is if we focused on the positive attribution of look at Sally, look at Bill, look at Bob, they all did not click. They're doing great. They're helping be aware and see the things that don't look quite right, that free Starbucks coupon that they got, right? And so they are paying more attention. I think we have to focus on the training. I think to your question of is it training or technical tools, it's neither, it's both, it's all. But it does start with the best line of defense is a well-educated populace. To the doctor's point here, he said, well, in the military, I didn't have to fight some of this because they followed the rules better and they did some of those things. And so we could focus, right? And it's probably more empirically true than the human populace, right? As an employee. I think that's an altruism. And I think what comes out of that, if we can train, get people engaged, bring security to the business unit, to the stakeholder, to drive things forward from a human, but also business operations and winning hearts and minds, right? A lot of times you go to say, I'm going to take away all administrative rights, and you go through this process and the policy supports it, to Diana's point, and everything aligns with the framework. And then you have 2 highly paid sales executives that sit there and say, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're going to lie about it. You're going to check this box and we're not doing it. Why? Because otherwise I'll leave. And you guys don't want to replace me. And so you get this pushback where the hearts and minds are so somewhat self-ignorantly saying, I don't want these additional pains. I don't want MFA. I don't like these challenges of having, all the tools and a VPN and encapsulation and all. So it's the technology, but you have to make sure that your people are willing to follow that are behind it. They're pulling the rope. They understand the mission. They understand the value of it. And so I think it's training first. You can protect a lot, by not letting my phishing campaigns from Evil Jinx get in and have you click on your LinkedIn site and me steal your token, right? And so there's those things that I think we need to focus on the humans, TLDR, humans. So.
For sure. Oren, what do you think? How would you respond?
Well, I think Diana mentioned it before. To start with, sort of a risk analysis, and when you are approaching organization, or you start to see what is the human factor, what does the technology, start with doing some assessment for the risks that you are facing, because they are not the same risk for an SMB or a large enterprise or a defense entity in Israel or the United States. So they all have different risk environment. They all have different assessment as of the other side that would like to control their assets. They would like to, trying to penetrate into them and to, of course, to damage. So, and now you come to the point, okay, so who's going to do that without any bias, without any that will be completely objective, and you're still looking for this objective entity that will say, okay, for the SMBs, this and this will be enough, because what they're using only email. I mean, they don't need much more than such and such protection. So, and now, once you do that, you'll be able also to do some analysis as of, okay, what is the human factor? What is their education? What they still need in order to be more educated towards the same risks and the same attacks that you met before. So I think, and it's not so complicated. It sounds like complicated, but it's not that complicated. I think organizations can really do that and can do it successfully, and then decide on the mix of what is the human training required, and versus all the technologies that we would like to integrate into this organization, and the formulation of this mix, and the amount of each part of it. I think this is the magic equation that we are looking for.
I want to hear Diana's insight on this, and then I know Chris has a lot to say. Surprisingly enough, so Diana, I would love to hear your insights.
Yeah, Chris has his rebuttal ready. Yeah, so I think it's about being clear-eyed and pragmatic about what technology can do and what technology can do well, and let technology do that. Right? The systems are really good at pattern matching, for example. So if you know something you want to match as a pattern and block that, great. That's a really good thing to let technology do. Access control with multi-factor authentication. Implement that. That's going to help you. Even if somebody gets the credentials, they're not going to be able to get in necessarily because you've got multi-factor authentication. So look at, and hygiene, mail hygiene tools. A lot of the mail that's coming through, it's really clearly awful. Right? So why even put that into somebody's inbox? Get it out of the way so that they can just deal with those fish that were actually very hard to validate that they were fish. And then we add in the human factor. But first, be pragmatic about what technology can do. Implement technology to make things as easy as possible on your users. And in the case of users that may be nefarious, the disgruntled insider, or you just got kind of the accidental, oops, I did the wrong thing. Technology can help there too, but it's obviously not going to solve all of your problems. So you need to balance it with education of the humans. And I really liked where Chris and Matt were going around, let's be more empathic about how we train and teach our people, because this really stick approach and shaming people, it doesn't work. And it's about being empathic. And I think it's also about leaning into the the psychology of how we learn and who we are as human beings. There's this fantastic book. And I apologize to anybody who's heard me mention this before because it's one of my favorites, but it's by Professor Robert Cialdini, and it's about influence and persuasion. And it talks about what makes us do things. It is not a technical book. It's really more of a psychological marketing book, but it really feeds into why we do things as human beings. And what I found so fascinating about that is that if you look at how attackers phish us or socially engineer us, they are using all of those techniques to great return. So we on the training side, on the defense side, I think that that's something to let's really lean in and use those techniques to help train people and be empathic about it. And then we're going to engage people to be our first line defenders. There's this old story about John F. Kennedy. He went to NASA and he saw somebody in the hallway, and the person had a broom who was sweeping the hallway. And the president said, "Hey, what do you do here at NASA?" And the person with the broom said, "I'm helping to put a man on the moon." Because he took it as his job as working at NASA. Sure, he was a janitor, but he saw himself helping to put a man on the moon. If everybody that works at your company thinks, I'm helping to keep us safe and keep us successful as an organization, now you've really got security programs that are going to help. And then you balance that with the tech doing what tech can do, and you're going to get a lot closer to being in a better state for your organization.
I'm completely and totally with you. And I've been writing a lot recently about trying to integrate this level of emotional intelligence and being aware of the skill set and the human element of the people that you're talking to, instead of just projecting this fear-mongering approach. Because although there is this risk and these very real threats, you need to be able to empower your staff and be able to empower your team to engage with the skills to be able to prevent this risk moving on. Chris, I want to bring you back here. What do you think?
So I'm actually gonna hit. There was a comment that came in from the Peanut Gallery. Srivatsa said, "We do our mandatory quarterly training as well as our onboarding training." I'm like, well, congratulations. So once every 3 months, you take your user population aside and you spend 15 minutes or 30 minutes telling them, don't click shit and don't send shit. And you expect them to remember that for the entire 3 months. Welcome to humans. We're really good at remembering stuff for about 30 seconds, maybe 45 seconds. And we know this because in American football, a 90-minute game takes 3 to 4 hours because you buggers keep stopping every 5 seconds for public breaks. And so people can catch up on what they forgot 25 minutes ago. And that's why we have reruns and all that other crap, because you don't remember shit. So I think the problem is, as well, is when we implement, to Diane's point, technology is fantastic at actually helping us. Technology is really, really good at supplementing and at doing certain things that we either don't want to do, can't do, or it's getting better and faster than we can do things. What it isn't good at doing is taking over stupid. And that's us. And that's us making assumptions. That's us going, well, I teach my people once a year. I get my tick in my compliance box. Woohoo! But what I don't do is actually help the human. What I need to do is go, hey, every month, every couple of weeks or whatever, how can I help those people that work with me and work for me? How can I help them? How can I empower them? How can I help them help their kids? How can I help them explain that this phone that you've given your little Johnny or little Deirdre or whatever is more dangerous than a freaking loaded gun? How do I help them understand that in a way that they can take and do something with? And I do that every few weeks. I build on it. I don't just once every quarter mandatorily say, don't click shit and don't send it. We have to be better at taking the very good tech that we use and actually implementing it effectively.
Well,
So
and I'll.
Yeah, no,
Sorry,
Matt,
go ahead.
please continue.
Well, I was going to say I'll take Diana's point and take it with Chris's in the same vein of, Chris Krebs, I think, is the one that says this. I may be wrong, but make it easier for users to do the right thing and harder for them to do the wrong.
Yeah.
And I think as we learn attack vectors where technology is the solution, then technology should be implemented to fix the solution, right? And I think that is the point that I was wanting to make. And I also just wanted to shout out to Nerman here in the crowd, because the importance of GRC value or just checkbox security, I could do like an hour on that conversation, right? Because I think they're married and also completely diametrically opposed pieces. But anyways, great audience participation.
Yeah, For for sure. So I kind of wanted to switch this as we're talking about being able to speak to the individual. I kind of want to talk about being able to speak to the organization's limitations. As Diana can really take over, you speak a lot to NGOs and nonprofits. They have a very different metric, a different budget, different limitations in which they have to work with. How do you work with these partners and being able to meet their needs while still being able to emphasize the high level cybersecurity, the training, the consistency in both implementing technology, but also the high level of awareness that they need to be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, this is why it really goes back to understanding, creating an assessment, understanding where the risks and exposures are, and then creating a plan. Because most smaller companies, a lot of the nonprofits and NGOs, they have limited resources. And that means if you don't, we can't do everything we want. Even large, well-funded enterprises have to make prioritization decisions. But certainly, the smaller that you get, the harder those decisions can be, or the more resource limited. So it's about understanding where the real exposures are, what you need to get done, and then creating a plan and doing what you can. There's no perfect, unfortunately, no company can accomplish everything they want to from a security perspective. So it's about figuring out what are the things that are going to give us the biggest bang for the buck. Where are we going to get our 80-20 Pareto principle, and how are we going to, how can we invest these limited resources? And just, it's about making these decisions wisely and it really engaging, especially when you're at these smaller companies, engaging the executives in the decision making. At larger companies, yes, executives should be involved. The board for some really big decisions needs to be involved. But generally, you've got so many people. If you've got hundreds of thousands of people in an organization, the CEO can't be involved in every decision. But at a smaller company, the CEO, the CIO, the CFO, they often are involved in these decisions. So it's really on the side of security to make sure that as you're creating this plan and explaining it to the executives, that you do so in a way that's going to make sense to them, that they can embrace, that they can make logical decisions and reasonable decisions for the organization from, because it's really easy to snow or flood somebody with a whole bunch of scary tech jargon. And at that point, who makes a good decision with that? So if you're working with these smaller companies, because you need to talk to the executives, again, prioritize, help them with a plan, but also really help to translate it.
Oren, as somebody on the vendor side who's trying to talk to organizations of all different sizes and understanding their specific risks, how do you kind of compartmentalize this equation?
Well, let's take the two extremes. Let's start with, let's say, government entities and some other entities that I consider them, under sometimes heavy regulations, sometimes kind of, trying to follow any, I'm not saying best practices, but they already been regulated. And we see in the US, for example, for utilities companies, the NERC and other regulation that trying really to put together, some guidelines. In this case, it's a little bit easier, even though I see that in many cases you need to translate these recommendations, and in some cases for towards the human factor, in some cases towards the technology. On the other extreme, I'm looking at the SMBs, and we started also with audits. We said, okay, we had a wonderful product for email security, and we said, okay, I think SMBs really need it, and because it's very simple to integrate, like a single click deployment, and it's very fast, very easy, very affordable. But then you realized that that SMBs, they don't have IT professionals, they don't have cybersecurity professionals, and it turned out that they really consume all their IT services and cybersecurity services, for service provider, either MSPs, MSSPs, and so on. So in this case, it's really more, educating the service providers, and you need to work with them. So, first of all, let them understand and let them, you know, realize what are the threats. Let them, sometimes they don't even realize what are the threats, and what are they facing, and what are they protecting, and then you can teach them and educate them and train them also the language, and how to really do a good job with the SMBs, because they really, they are very, let's say, trusted relationship between these SMBs and their service providers. They really count on them, and if a service provider tell them, hey, you should follow this or you do this and other things, they really do. And I think this trust they build along the years, and therefore in this case we should look very much to the service providers as the subcontractor for education, also for the SMBs.
So Matt, this is going to you. It had to go to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. So, I started, just for background, I started at an MSP when it was 7 people working there, and we had, just under $1 million in revenue. And we grew that to just over 40 million in revenue and 170 employees, about 600 clients or so, all in the S to SMB, S to M in the SMB space. And I think that the challenge is that most of the small to mid-sized businesses have made their whole practice with their MSP of just saying, I'll let the smart people handle it. Right. And you have that same MSP consuming vendor data that says, oh, you don't need to do anything for security. Just add this product and you'll have an S in your MSP or MSSP. Right. And so you have this undereducated, I'm pointing fingers at myself as well, but undereducated deliverer of services where there's no barrier to entry. My barber has to have more licensure than I do to stand up and say, I've got you. I'm your aggregator. I'll be the one to solve it. And to varying degrees across MSP space, they're starting to fight the battle of pushing back to that SMB and saying, no, I can't protect what I don't know. I can't know where your data is and what its value is and what the risk of that loss and exposure are. I can't know that without getting deep in it with you, without having conversations, without driving things. And so you're kind of seeing that and a confluence of platform plays, whether it's AWS, Microsoft, Google, whoever it may be, that make normalized variables for SMBs so that you can start delivering a true stack, right? So as an MSP, you can say, okay, I'm going to look at the major risks and the protect, detect, identify, recover, whatever. And I'm going to start picking out pieces to meet that framework. And I think to your point, you can see MSPs as they grow as an aggregator and a concentrator of bringing this knowledge down and also making it harder for people to do the wrong thing. I'll give you one small example. If we simply set up everyone's Office 365 to not allow token persistence, then the evil jinx attack methodology of grabbing a token and using that OAuth token in a different place is no longer valid. I'm not saying there's not other attacks, but as we start seeing the ability to do that in the same platform over and over again, it means it becomes scriptable and immutable and deliverable to people without as much human error. And so I think we're seeing this kind of confluence of platform plays, MSP maturation to overcome the chief challenge that SMBs really don't believe, even in all the preponderance of evidence, that the threat actors would target them, that there's any risk to them, that there's any loss to them. And we're starting to see that kind of shell of fake protection go away as people start understanding, yeah, my buddy's no longer in business and my friend Sally over there no longer has a company. And this just happened as a BEC and now we have ransomware. And then at the same time, you have Travelers Insurance saying you must have MFA, you must have. And so the questions are happening, the dialogue's beginning. And so in the MSP and SMB space, I feel better than I ever have about the outlook and prognosis of that going forward. But it definitely is a very large and broad challenge that's been created since we started computers. And I watched a TED Talk once that said, these doctors, they put in checklists in a surgical room. And when they made them follow this checklist and say, yes, I gave the post-surgical dose of antibiotics, yes, I did this, yes, I did these things, the death rate went down by 22%, right?
Wow.
And a very limited data set, but it was massive. And the point is, MSPs have been operating from shooting the gun from the hip. Oh, you need malware? I'll go get a malware product. I'll go find the bestest malware product that's there. I'll find the best email protection. I'll get these. But in reality, they weren't starting with a strategy, right? To bring it back to Diana's point earlier, is that they hadn't ever really thought of security as this larger operational thing based on data's value, risk of exposure. Do I even own the data? Is that someone else's? Do I now have privacy laws? Do I now have risk? And from that perspective, they've only ever focused on, oh, maybe I'll get ransomed. Well, that's one of 1,000 deaths, boys and girls, right? And I think the challenge is this is a underprepared environment against a much better attacker that has a very low barrier to entry. So I think the challenge is pretty broad in the SMB space, but it's getting better. I do believe.
Chris, do you think that being able to understand the limitations of different organizations is about framing the conversation and risk and being able to quantify it, or how would you be able to mitigate this risk environment for different size organizations?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on there perfectly, which is it is a risk conversation. And I'm not going to pick on anybody, but Matt sent me something from an organization, shall we say, that's a little close to this conversation, where they promised to stop everything and protect, and I don't think we can do that.
We cannot.
Maybe today you can. Maybe this 1 minute you can actually do that, but some pain in the ass somewhere is going to figure out a way around it. And I think that's part of the challenge is we don't build that into our conversation. We don't go into an organization saying shit's going to happen. Your ass is going to get handed to you at some point in time. So why don't we plan accordingly? Nobody goes, hey, the 6'3" hairy hacker that's out there, yeah, he's actually trying to help you, but you know what? He's also going to come inside and plant a flag, and there's nothing you can do to stop him. But what you can do is reduce the risk, understand and quantify the risk, and put a plan in place for when that flag is planted. Therefore, not everything gets ransomware, not everything gets breached. You actually have backups. Simple.
Live compromised, right?
Exactly,
like live compromised.
Mm.
And I think that's the big one there is we do, as an industry, we overpromise. And if we didn't underdeliver, we wouldn't be losing, 22 million pieces of data every single day across the globe. That's under-delivering.
True story.
Yeah, I would say so. So this kind of brings me to my favorite part of the conversation. What are we supposed to do with it? We've kind of had a lot of conversations about the misconceptions and understanding the different risk points, but I want to hear from you guys. What are the low-hanging fruits? What are the easy things that we can be able to implement to our teams, to employees, to users everywhere, where they can decrease their threat of attack, and they can stop the easy wins for cyber criminals? Diana, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think going after passwords first. So if you don't have some kind of single sign-on that's true single sign-on or passwordless in your organization, and even if you do, you might still want to look at password wallets or password managers and giving those out to your employees, because it's still not uncommon to get employees who get favorite passwords that they use in their personal lives and also on in their enterprise world. So helping people to do better password hygiene in an easy way, and that's what those password managers do. Multi-factor authentication, if you don't have it turned on absolutely everywhere where you can turn it on, do that. And when you're looking at the administrative side of things, try and take that approach and bring it over. And what I mean by that is for remote access to administer machines, whether they're on-prem or they're in the cloud, look at things like jump servers or protected servers so that you can only have certain servers can go in and do remote administration on other servers. That's going to limit, then if you get somebody into your environment, they're starting to make lateral movement, they have to get to that server and get on it. Also, remote access for administration on your core critical servers, it probably doesn't have to be on all the time. So you can use just-in-time administration. So you keep narrowing the attack surface, narrowing what they can do, even if you have, as Matt was talking about, you live with compromise, you're narrowing and making it much harder for the folks that do get in to be able to accomplish something nefarious or damaging in the organization. And then the last, I mean, this is always, it's hard, right, to just give like a couple of like top
Yeah.
level things.
Just a
I
couple
want to
of
say,
the huge tire fire that we're trying to get out of.
yeah, I mean, I want to say sit down and have a big plan and do the assessment. But the other one is backups. We're still not doing a great job at comprehensive backups that are offline and protected, making sure that we've got a cold backup, for examples, or making sure that the backups are even working. I can't tell you how many times companies will say, oh yeah, our backups are great, they're fine, we do them regularly, we're all set there. And you say, okay, well, can we just restore? Like, let's take one of your systems offline and do an auto restore, right? And they're like, that's not really working. So if you do have something in place, make sure that you're practicing it with your backups and just with your general incident response. One thing that every company can do is tabletop exercises. You think that you've got a good response plan, practice it, bring the executive, but also do a technical response. Just roll it out, do a little bit of chaos, drop out a couple of servers in the middle of the day at a busy time, and see if you guys can recover, so that you're really stress testing your own plans, because plans without a test often do not behave as expected under duress.
Truer words have rarely been spoken. Chris, I want to give you the opportunity to save the masses here. How are we going to help everybody? What are we going to do?
Oh, I'm not going to save the masses. To hell with it. Some of them are going to have to die. I'm done. Seriously. Apparently, the only way humans learn is if we kill off a few of them. And I don't know how many we have to kill off, how many bodies you have to walk over to get to your keyboard before people actually start paying attention. That unfortunately is where we are today.
It's a tough metric. We were talking about quantifying risk. I'm not sure if I'm prepared to exactly make that assessment right now. Maybe later in the broadcast. We'll see where it goes.
We need some whiskey for that one, unfortunately. And again, back to the, unfortunately not making it out to Israel for Cyber Week. I'd normally have the whiskey case with me. I think,
I heard about your whiskey carts, yeah.
Yes, yeah, it's I keep it fairly busy. So again, to build off what Dan is saying, to me, a lot of it comes down to the basics. It's the simple stuff. And again, we'll take the military approach on this one. You typically don't go kick in a door or jump out of a plane until you actually know what the situational awareness is. Yeah, we continue to try to protect companies without understanding what the hell we're protecting. We continue to go into organizations and say we can protect you, or the company goes, hey, I'm going to buy this to protect myself, without fully understanding their situational awareness. So if you don't know what the hell you've got, how the hell do you know how to protect it? So this is where we need to go back to the very simple stuff. Look at your assets, physical assets and digital assets. And by the way, when you tell me you don't have enough people to do it, go get a freaking intern, go get an apprentice, go pull somebody who's just coming out of the military, hand them a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil, because some of them shouldn't be allowed to have actual pens, and then say, actually, go do asset inventory for me, go do some checking for me, tell me what I actually have, so that now I can understand how the hell to protect it. Now I can overlay passwords, MFA, 2FA. Now I actually know what I have in my environment. Because I'll tell you right now, you ask any company out there, any organization, including .mil and .gov, and they won't be able to tell you exactly what assets they have. So how the hell do you know what you're protecting?
Yep.
So Oren, as somebody who's kind of been in the military setting and had to work with these real world objectives where you can't negotiate, what are the practical solutions that you would suggest? What do you think that people are really missing, and how can we really change the equation?
Well, in some of the recent podcasts that I participated, I've been asked the same question that I said, well, we need to do three major things, which are awareness, and awareness. And I think this is the key. As Chris said, and I think we were talking about it along this session, the human factor is critical. We should increase the portion of the human factor in the formula of the training and in the tools that we say that we are about to protect our organization. So I think the first and major thing is to increase the awareness. How you do that? You train the people, you educate the people, you show them a lot of examples, you make them a lot of demos, what can happen, and other things, so they really feel that it is not a science fiction, but it's really across the block, and it's there, because one of the things that always people say and tend to say that, well, it won't happen to me, I'm secured, and so on, but they really don't realize how simple it is to penetrate to them. So I think that awareness and training and working on the human factor is the major challenge. We need to start this at early age, because now young people, children, and so on, they are growing into this world of networking. Everything is computerized. They are watching the monitors and the screens from their mobile to the laptop to the desktop and to the iPad, and all the life is there, and all the lives are vulnerable, and they need to understand it. And once we can get to a point that people are aware, we almost done, halfway. Of course, we complement it with the technology, and I think Diana really touched the major things. I would like to comment one thing about backup, because again, it's something people are thinking that, okay, we'll do backup, and so if we will be hit by the ransomware, we have the backup, in order to get back to life. But what happens is the hackers now, attacking also the backup. So it need to be a kind of either more than cold backup, but kind of an offline and very well, protected. Really, there's a lot of technologies, and I think that they are the complement portion of the human factor.
Matt, what do you think? What are the most applicable practical solutions we can apply to decrease the attack surface?
Well, I tell you, going last behind all these amazing people just means that you're ultimately going to say ditto a bunch. But I would say with Oren's point of the human element being one of the major halves of it, and then also to Diana's points that implementing MFA and thinking about it and being purposeful and trying to have one single identity that you use, right? I like to say, and I'm stealing this from a friend of mine, Nathan, but identity is the new firewall, right? And it's the new edge, and it is absolutely that central point. And so instead of having 100 identities and having passwords everywhere and signing into them with their own respective 2FA tokens, their own respective attack vectors, if you simply tie back to an IDP and have a better control mechanism and have that be part of a single sign-on process and have MFA and multiple factors as part of that, both what they're accessing and the data value of that as part of a factor, I think that's going to have one of the larger impacts. I think the systemic issue is that there are thousands of new vectors, there's thousands of new ways, where there's a will, there's a way. If I want to get in your organization, I'll definitely get in, even if that meant I'm going to come in and implant something or get someone hired or go down the path. And you have to start thinking like, I'm always compromised. And so I would probably say is if people would start trying to tabletop, like Diana said, and say, okay, I'm compromised. Someone got on this machine. It has this impact. They're now going to do this. It really helps you kind of understand some of those things, and taking away a machine and having people experience that gets people into it. Someone made a comment about the killing off humans, right? But the point is, and I think what Chris was trying to make, I make this one as well. Imagine Chris, myself, and Diana are standing on the top of a hill and overlooking this cliff where we would fall to our death. And I slowly reach over and push Diana off the hill without any facial expressions. Is there any chance that Chris Roberts doesn't either A, back up, B, push me off the hill, or C, take a stance and defend himself? No, because he watched the death. And the point is, he doesn't have anything else but to believe the empirical thing in front of his face that says, yes, if we don't take these actions, we will fail. And it's not technocracy, and it's not those things. It really is the people more proximal to the death have more things to say about it. And furthermore, if Chris ran down the hill and there was another person coming up to join me, Orman's coming up to join me, then he's going to look at him and say, don't go up there. There's a dude pushing people off the hill up there, bro. Is there any chance that person doesn't believe Chris because of his passion, because of his belief, because it just looks genuine? And so, I think the point is that if we start living compromised, assume that we will always have some form of attrition, have some form of a loss, that threat actor is going to get in, right? I use threat actor instead of hacker because I identify as a hacker. And so as you think about the threat actor getting in, what if I limited it, right? What if I limited the risk? And I'll give you a great example. I had 600 clients, right? I had 5 different offices. I had 170 employees. They all managed different environments as MSPs for SMBs, right? I wanted to limit it through my single sign-on policies and through my role-based access control and through my principles of least privilege, so that when Yehuda got compromised and he had 32 clients, those 32 clients are the only ones suing me. Right. And the point is that what we're doing is limiting that risk and making the assumption I'm going to have this and sharing those things and talking about supply chain risk and talking about risk in general. But really, I think the point, not getting too long winded, is that I think everybody's said some portion of how we reduce this. The challenge is really the human and getting people to genuinely believe that they are putting a man on the moon. And I think that's the challenge today, is they don't. They're just collecting a check in a lot of ways. So that's it.
It's a good closing. So I think what we should do now is open it up to questions a little bit, and then we'll have closing remarks. So I kind of would like to start off. Chris really wants to talk about this discussion of terms a little bit, and I think that's something that really needs some clarification, and something that you kind of brought to my attention many months ago, and has really changed my terminology and how I'm approaching it. So when we say hacker and we always put it in this negative connotation, how can you balance the pursuits and the cyber exploits that are attributed to them versus cyber criminal being able to understand an ethical hacker versus an adversary? How can you draw that, and how can people on the outside kind of understand that nuance?
I think it's tough because, unfortunately, there's an argument to say the cat's already out of the bag and the media's gone hold of it and there's nothing we can do about it. And unfortunately, there's a huge argument in that way. But for those of us who grew up in this industry, for those of us who are part of building this industry, a hacker is a proud badge to wear, because the origins of that word were very, very positive. It's a mind thing, it's a mental thing. It's not actually anything to do with stealing your data and doing something nefarious with it. We'll leave that to the criminals and the adversaries and the attackers. And unfortunately, even inside our own industry, the word it's kind of crazy. You actually help build something, and then the industry that you help build actually blames you for the problems inside of it. It's just like, how about every single one of you pain in the asses in the marketing and media side of the world learn the terminology of the people that actually built the darn industry that everybody's profiteering from and feeding from the table of? And how about we actually look at it from a very non-technical standpoint? Somebody breaks into your house, you don't blame they're a criminal, they're an adversary, they're an attacker. You don't sit there and go, well, that's an ethical accountant that broke into my house. No, that asshole was a criminal. I'm sorry, my house was broken into by an ethical builder. No, actually it wasn't. It was broken into by a freaking criminal. And so that's the reason we've tried to soften the blow down. I mean, there's some ethical white collar criminals. No, there aren't. There are criminals. So, let's call it what it is. You break in, and it isn't a line. It's a very fuzzy area for those of us that work with the morals and ethics of this world. You do something for the negative of others. Congratulations, you stepped over that line.
What is the rest of the panel? Diana, Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, our language is alive. And because it's alive, the meanings of words change over time. Hacker was originally a term used at MIT about engineers doing really cool things like putting fiberglass cows and cars on the top of the Great Dome. And it's now been adopted, and it does mean it's bifurcated in its meaning. Some people mean it as someone who's got an engineering bent who wants to understand how things work and be able to take them apart and put them back together for good. It also means a criminal attacker. So we just have to, right now, that's just how that word is. It's got this dual meaning. And as Chris said, criminals are criminals. I once got into a big discussion with someone over, they were trying to explain to me that, somebody had gray mailed a company because somebody had gotten in, taken their data, right? Not blackmailed, but gray mailed them, gotten in and taken their data and hadn't released it, but were going to sell security services to the company to explain how they got in so the company could fix it. And that is not gray mailing. That is
blackmail.
Straight up blackmailing. That's criminal activity. So I think it's just a matter of on us to understand that when someone is doing something criminal, some people refer to that as hacking, but there are a lot of us who have an engineering bent who want to understand how things work and be able to take them apart to put them back together, make them stronger and more, more resistant and resilient. And right now, it's just hacker means both of those. But let's not soften on criminals. If they're criminals, let's call them what they are: criminals.
Agreed.
No, I actually, if Matt was very gracious in defending me and my technocratic. Actually, it's not really. I mean, it's not really a technocrat. I'm just going to call it straight out dictatorship. It really is as simple as that. There's no technocrat here. There's purely dictatorship. So there was an individual, Jeff. Jeff was very nice, but unfortunately, there is an argument inside our own industry for those of us that have been watching this for too long that the time for being nice is actually over. We've tried. We've tried nicely. We've tried walking up to people and going, I say, would you mind changing your password, please? And then we walked up and said, I say, there was a wonderful password. Password 1 was absolutely splendid. Would you mind adding a couple of special characters? Then we walked out to them a little later and said, I say, password 1 exclamation mark was rather splendid as well. However,
this comes with tea and crumpets, I assume.
And we've tried the nice,
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Pinkies out.
Then we tried saying, I say, we'd love to educate you on why password 1 exclamation mark isn't perfect. And now we've got to the point where computers are no longer just sitting in front of us, and they are not just part of our life, they are our lives for the most part. We rely upon them for life itself, let's be perfectly honest. And yet we are still struggling with the very, very fundamentals and the basics, otherwise we wouldn't be having this fantastic conversation. And there's an argument to say that the time for being nice is actually over. The very simple fact is, with an iPad or with an iPhone, I can enact a situation where I can take human life. Now, if we've got to that point and we're still arguing over password 1 exclamation mark, we have other problems. And so, Jeff, totally get it. Don't mean to be offensive, but it really is at a point where humans, unfortunately, don't pay attention until it affects you. COVID, perfect example.
Yeah.
Back to the beginning of it.
Exactly.
Okay, so maybe we'll yeah, what were you saying, Matt?
No, I just have I have 2 points on that. Chris's point to let's take it out of this theoretical, right? There was a research company last year or so that did an MRI proof of concept where they could inject cancer into the MRI, right? Not the human, but into the MRI, thereby increasing a treatment for cancer that does not exist theoretically, right? And so the ways to attack and actually kill humans, and the pipeline in Saudi that was just for the grace of God, the code failed and didn't blow up the oil plant. Mm-hmm. Right? There's been many, many occasions where threat actors are creating situations of human life being lost. And I think to Chris's point, not being too hyperbolous, this is well within reality in the near future, right? I mean, Ukraine's been a punching bag for Russia for years, and those type of things will start turning into human loss. So, just wanted to add that color.
Thank you so much, Matt. So to go into the question section, I want to point out a question from Nadia over here. What do you perceive as the main challenges in the collaboration process across multidisciplinary departments, all with different maps of the worlds and different worldviews? Matt, do you want to answer?
Because I might, because we're so smart as to think that security is this outside freaking entity, right? That security team will come tell us what to do, and No, security has to live in the orgs, right? So the different, multidisciplinary departments, there should be security representation inside those organizations. I almost have this concept of night of a round table where the security teams live in the orgs, respond to the orgs, are budgeted for by the orgs, and make decisions at a higher level for security around that. But ultimately, I think the problem is that we're looking at security teams as this outside force. It's not a bolt-on. It's not a radiator, right? It's part of the engine. It is the core system function of data privacy, confidentiality, and availability and integrity. Right? I got my CIA. It's now CAI. But the point is that I think we've thought of security as this tangential force as opposed to a core business operating and stakeholder of the world inside every business unit. If you were to do it that way, then the tabletops would be meaningful to the departments. The tabletops would allow for those things to be stress tested in a way that actually means something to the data and its risk, right? As opposed to, oh, the security team's going to shut down server 70426 today, and we're going to there's no context there. And so I think that part of the challenge is that we've thought of security as this bolt-on, right? You have your CIO. Oh, now we got to secure it. Let's have a CISO. Wait, what? I don't know that I understand the delineation in that way, and maybe that's just my youth. But I think that the challenge is that we take security outside of the business units.
Oren, what do you think? You there?
He clicked on my link.
He clicked on your link. He clicked on your
We
link.
lost him.
You know what?
He might have done. We lost him. We've lost him.
It happens. Everybody loses their privilege to talk
I
sometimes.
lost you guys.
There he is.
Nice
There he is.
Oh, there's the boss. There's the boss, man. I was talking good about you, man. I promise.
Oh, I hope so.
Only it's being recorded. It's being recorded. So Oren, I'd love to hear your understanding of how you would be able to delineate this responsibility and be able to articulate this security need across different departments and different levels of understanding.
Well, this is a very deep question, and I think that it's all about at the end of the day the size of organization. I think currently, as organization become larger, they understand the position of the protection of cybersecurity. So they have divisions, they have all parts, and sometimes is the CISO, sometimes he reports to the CIO, sometimes he reports to the CEO. But at the end of the day, I think that at this point, many enterprises and large companies, they really understand, and I think they got the awareness of cybersecurity. So I would say that in this case, they need to keep updated all the time. And this is the key issue, because this world doesn't stop for a second. Even though you got the great technology, someone got you the great technology that, stop this and this, but next day, hackers, they can bypass it and do some other things. So the key point is really to be updated to the most recent, events, the most recent capabilities. I'm always say, wear the hat of the attacker or the criminal, not the hacker. Some people were offended by this. So the criminals try to wear the hat of a criminal for a certain time and think a little bit like he does, and maybe you can come up with very interesting insights, and you'll be able to do some other things or do things differently, and you have a better protection.
Amazing. So I want to kind of close off with our key takeaways and closing remarks. Matt, what's your big takeaway from this conversation?
I think my dumpster fire picture was quite appropriate. No, I tease. I think my takeaway is that we're all practitioners and aware of this, and yet how do we translate that to, the general public and get more and more people involved in thinking like a threat actor, right? As you said, Orman. So that's my wrap up.
Thank you. Chris, closing remarks?
So I'm going to borrow from two very good friends of mine, Ryan Cloutier and Evan Frankel, who we do the podcast with on Thursdays. And one of the biggest things and one of the simplest words we ever work on is accountability. There is a distinct lack of it, not just within our own industry, but as we interact with the very businesses that, wow, that was a good one, with the very businesses that we are charged with protecting. And I think we need to go look in the mirror. I think we all need to, those using and those selling, peddling, and protecting, and go, how do we all become more accountable? That's it.
Diana, what's your closing takeaway? What should we take out of the conversation?
Well, I think that we've seen the industry evolve. The old school. The problem exists between chair and keyboard, and it's all the carbon-based life form is the problem. I think that we've really evolved to understand that people are actually our first response and our first defenders, and I love that because technology. It's probably why we're all in this in the field. We clearly love it, but it's got its limitations. So I'm really excited, seeing this conversation or hearing this conversation evolve and just what's happening in the community. I think that there's just a lot more awareness that we need to talk to our people, help to educate them. And one tip maybe to leave everybody with is that instead of shaming people, right, we've already talked about that that's not going to be very effective. Think about maybe doing catch of the month with your employees. And you start showing the crazy fish that somebody caught and reported either right through their email or into the help desk if you don't have the capacity within your email system. You can do something like catch of the month, and this starts to really engage everybody. One, because usually they're kind of fun. They can see, oh, that was a really dumb way to do it, or that was a really clever way the attackers did it. But also it helps to celebrate the person who responded to it first. So you make it a little competitive. Most of us competitive at heart. They can get maybe something simple like a $20 gift certificate at Amazon or some other online retailer. But by doing that, now you're starting to engage them. They realize that they are part of the fabric of the organization of defense, and everybody at the company is going to be eligible for it. So it engages all of the different cross-organizational groups.
Amazing. Oren, what do you think? What should we take out of the conversation? What should we move on from here?
Well, I think that I recommend everyone, don't forget your roots and don't forget the basics. We sometimes, we are trying to get the most recent technologies and, we are going AI and machine learning and, all this stuff, but we forgot the very basic steps, about, educating the people, about training, about awareness. So I'm saying is that never forget your roots and your basics.
I'll take it. So with that, I'd like to thank all of our panelists, to thank the Cyfluencer platform for helping us organize this, for everybody joining us, and for the amazing participation. And for me, I learned a lot. I thought this was an amazing conversation, and I really hope that everybody enjoyed it half as much as I did. And I look forward to talking to everybody really soon. And let's make the world a safer cyber environment and keep our assets a little bit more secure. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.